Reconstruction era ran from 1865 to 1877. It was during this time that the U.S. was wrestling with issues of reintegrating Confederate states and deciding the legal status of African Americans. Reconstruction created the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. The 13th abolished slavery, the 14th gave citizenship to all people born in the U.S., and the 15th gave Black Americans the right to vote. Music that formed the backbone of American popular music survived and continued to develop, such as the blues, work songs, and spirituals. The Gilded Age refers to a period of rapid economic and population growth in the U.S. It includes technology, larger businesses, urbanization, and immigration. There was labor songs, cowboy songs, many political songs, and an introduction to ragtime during the Gilded Age. A dispute between Carnegie Steel Company and the workers erupted in violence in 1892 at Andrew Carnegie's steel plant. The Homestead Strike song by Pete Seeger, written in 1992, gives an idea for many listeners of what happened during this event. That history is used in music culture today. Carnegie's response to the strike shares how these workers got little attention and care, and how these titans of industry were only involved for their benefit. World War I was an international conflict that engulfed most of Europe as well as Russia, the U.S., the Middle East, and other regions. The sudden sinking of the American trade ships was a primary reason that the U.S. entered World War I. At the same time, the war altered American society. Because of imperialist America and World War I, there was a lot of patriotic songs created. The Roaring Twenties developed societal changes such as modernism. Harlem Renaissance installed a new sense of self-determination and pride. The Great Depression was the most darkest periods in history of the world. FDR's innovations aimed to restoring prosperity to Americans. Jazz, blues, swing, and ragtime were among the decade's most popular musical genres. Big bands and swing music were popular in the 1930s. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Were people who were open to new ideas, fashions, and social trends. Traditionalists desired to live a simple life and primarily stuck with values from generations before. If traditionalist views went against modernism views, then the musical tastes also differed. Many flappers enjoyed jazz, and there was a lot of songs written about flappers during this time. The dancing aspect relates to the music since it was inspired by the Harlem Renaissance. Following the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the United States declared war on Japan. The United States officially entered World War II 3 days later. President Roosevelt and Congress approved the country's first peacetime military draft in response to the possibility of war. This unit brought a significant cultural shift, and families at home and soldiers abroad found solace in jazz music. Glenn Miller volunteered to join the U.S. military to amuse troops. I'll Be Seeing You, released in 1938, quickly became one of the most popular songs. This shares how jazz and blues were a way to connect others during war. The Glenn Miller story is a great example of the resources put into both sides of the conflict. The Cold War was a period of political, military, economic, and ideological friction between the West and Eastern communist countries. The Vietnam War, which lasted from 1955 to 1975, was fought between communist North Vietnam. Rock and roll dominated this decade, and there was a clear distinction between hard, rebellious rock and lighter, soft rock, which sounded a lot like pop music.
Excuse me.
the civil rights protests and the Cuban Missile Crisis dominated the 60s. The counterculture movement labeled people known as the hippies. Counterculture is a culture whose values and behavioral norms differ significantly from those mainstream society, and can be diametrically opposed to mainstream cultural mores. Music and singing were influential in inspiring, mobilizing, and giving voice to the civil rights movement. The counterculture movement, which began in the 60s, is a subculture that opposed many societal views. Counterculture influenced the genre of music, particularly psychedelic rock, which skyrocketed during the time.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you've only waiting for this moment to arise. How it came about was we were seeing a lot of news coming from America in the 60s about civil rights, and down in the South, like in Alabama and Arkansas, Little Rock, we were seeing the segregation, and we didn't realize that went on, you know. We were kind of shocked. So I wanted to try and write a song that if it ever got back to those people going through those struggles, it might just give them a little bit of hope.
Music from earlier years influenced music from later years. For example, jazz influenced rock, R&B, hip-hop, pop, and other genres. And these musicians at the time paved way for music today. Also, music from earlier years gave new aspects for song lyrics now, as many songs focus on events surrounding the time period, such as Blackbird by Paul McCartney.